What's up, guys? We have a special guest here with us today. Would you like to introduce yourself for the people who don't know?
Let's go. What's good, guys? My name is Yacine. I make Yu-Gi-Oh videos on YouTube, so combo videos, deck profiles, discussions, etc. And yeah, I like going to YCSs, but not locals and regionals because I'm lazy. And I have recently finished 4th at YCS Lille with my Yubel deck, which we will go over in this video right here with my boy Gage.
Awesome. I do have a couple of questions for you, especially for the people who are there trying to, top their first YCS. Do you have any tips for them?
Yeah, preparing yourself like mentally and physically is really important. So a lot of, I mean, everyone does it differently. I learn the hard way all the time, and I never stop learning because this YCS was particularly difficult for me. The jet lag was kind of rough because obviously I had to fly out, so this is also something that you should be taking into consideration when you're pretty much like changing continents. Make sure that you arrive a few days earlier because otherwise, like the first couple of days, you're going to be completely destroyed. Sleep was really rough for me, which means that on day 1 and day 2, you might just have trouble focusing. And it's really important to drink a lot of water and actually eat food. You don't want to be there on an empty stomach because otherwise you will misplay and you will be losing games that are completely within your control. For the playtesting part, I would say try to avoid playtesting last minute. It's kind of like, I compare it to like studying for an exam. If you are studying for the exam exactly before it starts, it's really just going to be even more nerve-wracking. And if anything, it's going to make you just not focus as much. So try to just playtest before, like a couple of days before submitting your deck list. Try to avoid being last minute so that when you get to the event, it feels almost relaxing, and you also don't see it as a chore. You see it more of like as a fun experience. And also try to play your games for fun, because one thing that I can say is that YCS Lille was my best performance ever out of all my YCSs, and it was the one YCS where I honestly wasn't even trying to do well. I was almost trying to lose so I could go back to sleep to catch up with sleep, because like I said, had 0 hours of sleep for day 1 and only 3 hours of sleep for day 2. And just because I was playing for fun, I wasn't too stressed with anything. I was very, like, my mind was very clear and everything. So it's just the best mindset that you can have, honestly.
What about for the people who for myself, for example, I have 3 YCSs in a row where I just completely threw the last round of day 1. Like, I've top 8 mini regionals, right? That's a cakewalk for me. But anytime I go to a YCS, I always throw the last round.
Yeah, would you say it's because of stress or because the day was really long and you kind of exhausted your mental stamina?
I would probably say, just exhausting myself.
Yeah, well, how many hours of sleep do you try to aim for day 1? Because honestly, I think it really does matter. It's the kind of thing that will like hurt you in the long run.
Maybe you mean like 5 to 6 hours.
All right, yeah. Well, the way I see it is, you don't. I probably would try to aim like 8 to 9 hours for day 1, just because you want to be so relaxed that you are not gonna be waking up pretty much thinking like immediately of the event. You're almost gonna be waking up as if it was like in the middle of the day, and you already have like all of your energy. And also, I don't necessarily recommend like a big breakfast either, because that's probably just gonna clog you up. So maybe just like a little water, some protein bars, whatever, and something light, just so that you also won't feel like nauseous, because that's another issue that you can have. But for the last round of day 1, yeah, you really just gotta motivate yourself and tell yourself that day 2 is coming. I mean, right after this, you don't have to play any more rounds. So for me, the last round of day 1, I almost consider it like a blessing, just because the day is after that. So
That's a nice take on that. I need to start applying that. That sounds like a really good take. I haven't thought about it like that. But let's go ahead and get into the deck profile.
all right.
I'll let you explain everything and all of your takes and how you play the deck.
Sure, yeah, so I played 17 hand shafts, 17 one-card starters, and if my maths are correct, that's, what, 8 combo pieces? 34, 6, no, that's 9. All right, so the maths was I want a 93.17 plus percent chance of getting my stuff going, while also having a 93 plus percent chance of having a hand trap that hurts my opponent. So I play the exact same amount of hand traps as starters because your hand in a perfect world would be two different starters. So let's say like Samsara and Engraver, and then two different hand traps, and then the fifth card is probably going to be a bad card. So something like Squirmer, a Yubel monster of cards that don't really do anything for you. It will happen, obviously, but it is what it is. Now, at least this is the best way of ensuring that your hand is always like full of, live plays at your disposal. Because with a 40 card deck, I think you're going to brick a little more often on the combo pieces. So that's the reason why people typically choose to play 43, just because you can kind of play with the mats a little and play one more starter, one more hand shop, and that's essentially going to drown the bricks in your deck, so you're going to be drawing them a little less often. So for my hand shops, I really wanted to play as many hand shops that could actually stop the Tenpai Dragon deck while still being very good against everyone else, because one popular list that I have been seeing a lot would be the version where you're not playing the baby hand shops like Ash, Imper, and Veiler, but rather people are playing Phantasme, Baldrakes, a lot of Bestials overall, like Druid's Worm, etc. Molchami main deck. It can make sense because at this point you're really just destroying the mirror match, but unfortunately you are putting yourself in a very bad position against Tenpai Dragon because obviously Bestials, Nibiru, Phantasme, not the best against Tenpai Dragon. Whereas when you're playing the baby hand shops like Ash, Imper, and Veiler, that's pretty good. And also these cards are going to be very, very good post game one. And also they are some of the defensive cards that you have when you are getting hit by Shifter. Maybe not Veiler and Ogre, obviously, but you get the point. Ash and Perm are pretty nice. So yeah, 17 hand shops made me feel comfortable. The Bestials, I don't really necessarily see them as great cards, but Magnamut is an insane card. So I'm playing Magnamut and Druid's Worm just because of Magnamut. Druid's Worm to me is irrelevant. The one Mourner might seem a little awkward, but it really isn't. So the reason why Mourner is there is because it is a wind monster with 0 attack. So post game 1, when my opponent summons Quackimiru Drago off of Hieratic Seal, my Metal Tronius, which I side, can actually target it and special summon Mourner and negate Quackimiru Drago. And so every card in this deck has a utility. The two Ogres, to me, it's like one of the worst hand traps, but the reason why I still play 2 is because I can hand trap I can Ogre my opponent on turn 1, and then on my own turn, I can Ogre again as a board breaker. So for example, if my opponent goes IP Masquerade effect, I can Ogre that, or Ogre some other cards that, I might be able to just stop with Ogre and not anything else. Veiler, obviously that's a self-explanatory, just a little worse than Imperm, but it's still a good card. Imperm, obviously insane. Ash, insane. And Nibiru, I think it's only a good hand trap if you're playing a lot of other hand traps. For my starters, I don't really think I have to necessarily explain anything. I'm maxing out on just about all the consistency cards that you can think of, except that I'm only playing 2 tracked instead of 3, just because I don't want to have too much redundancy. If you're playing 3 tracked and 3 engraver, that's a lot of cards that do the exact same thing. Now, 1 for 1 is a card that isn't necessarily redundant because you can draw 1 for 1 and Samsara, and your 1 for 1 can still summon Fabled Luri. So that gives you even more layers of play. So I really just wanted to diversify the amount of different cards that I had. And honestly, I think this list was just incredible for me. It just performed amazingly well, and I couldn't really have asked for any better. And I think the last thing that I really should be explaining, 3 things. First of all, I'm playing 2 Squirmer. It's really just because I think it's a good card, but you can play 1 Squirmer and that's fine. I'm only playing 1 Spirit of Yubel when a lot of people are playing 2 Spirit of Yubels. I'm actually not a big fan of that card. I really don't think you need 2. It's not needed for anything. Yeah, sure, you can get hit by a Bestial, and it kind of sucks, but it is what it is. You can still recover it because you can destroy your Phantom, and then that triggers the Throne, and then you can revive back the Spirit. And honestly, once you're done using Spirit to set your Nightmare Pain, you don't really need Spirit anymore. You can just start playing with your regular Yubel and Terra Incarnate. The only thing it really changes is that now you no longer have access to Varudras, which honestly, I can live without. It's not that much of a necessity. And finally, the last thing I should be explaining would be Escape of the Unchained, the trap card that can destroy. I'm not playing Chamber. Everybody at the YCS was playing Chamber, but I preferred Escape because destroying a card is an additional interruption. And obviously, it makes you play the second Yama, which means that you can't play the third Phantom. But honestly, it doesn't really bother me too much. It was fine with 2 Phantom. Very easy to recycle it back. You got Nightmare Throne, you got Unchained Soul of Rage. Yeah, it's not the end of the world. As long as you know how to manage your resources, you should be fine just with the extra deck that I have. And finally, for the side deck, because I think the extra deck is also kind of self-explanatory, you really need absolutely everything, except that you can argue the second Yama. If you don't want to play it, that's fine. But for the side deck, Change of Heart, 3 Molchamis, and 3 Metaltronius. These are the 7 cards that I'm absolutely always siding in going second against the mirror match. And I am siding out the 3 Dark Beckoning Beast, the Opening, the 1-for-1, the Terra Incarnate, and the Sharvara. So I'm removing 3 combo pieces from my deck, which obviously do not get anything started for me. And I'm also removing 4 starters from my deck, which means that my deck becomes less consistent going second post game 1. But I compensate that by adding more consistency cards. So Molchami Parolia makes me draw cards, so I draw into my starters. And I also de-incentivize, I don't know how to say that word, but whatever. I kind of, I don't want my opponent to full combo when I have Molchami. So my opponent makes a half board, maybe like Caesar Pass, something like that. And Metaltronius and Change of Heart are extremely good against those half boards. Because if my opponent ends on Caesar, either I Change of Heart, steal it, and then I can negate his Nibiru, or I can go Metaltronius, negate the Caesar, and then summon DSE Ray, and then turn it into the Fiendsmith Link 1, summon the Fiendsmith, and then combo from there. So the goal is to never sacrifice consistency for power. It's really important. You need your deck to do something productive every single time. And as a matter of fact, in 16 rounds, I think I only bricked once, and it was going second when it didn't really matter anyways. My hand could have been the nuts and I still would have lost. But yeah, like I said, this configuration was perfect for me. For my going first cards, I had 3 copies of Triple Tactic Talent and a Call by the Grave. I never drew the Call by the Grave, I think. It's just a one of. But Talent, I think I drew it once, and I immediately won that game. Like, literally on the spot. It's really insane, because this deck is naturally resilient at beating one hand shop, so Talent will always take care of the second hand shop. Moving forward, I will replace Talent with Crossout, just because Molchami Fueros really scares me. So I want 7 ways of countering Fueros, so Ash, Crossout, Called by. And Cosmic Cyclone honestly was very weak for me. I didn't like it too much. I think if I could replace it with Dimensional Barrier or Lightning Storm, Duster, something like that, that could probably be better. The Unchained Soul of Anguish was also completely useless. I sided it in every single time going second, but I only summoned it once, and it got ogred anyways. So I never actually used this effect. It is what it is, but I guess it's just, yeah, it's just utility. It's not like I really regret it, because now at least I understand that you can still win all those games without Anguish. It's just that you gotta play it differently. That's it for the deck explanation, but if you have any questions, I'm there.
Yeah. How do you feel about this deck going into post Rage of the Abyss?
Yeah, so I think the deck is essentially the same. I wouldn't really add anything to the deck just because it's a new set. I wouldn't really change that much, but I would replace the Nibirus with the Molchami Fueros, because I think Nibiru is very weak against the Azamina-based strategies. They are very good at setting that Omni Negate early on, so you want to use baby handshops to stop them, not giant handshops like Nibiru, Bestials, etc. Droll is going to be solid as well, but I don't think I would be playing Droll, just because I prefer Molchami Fueros, so I would try to main deck 3 copies of that. If I tried going first, it's not the end of the world. I can discard it for 1-for-1 or Muckraker, so I can always get some value off of Molchami Fueros. Not to mention that Molchami Fueros is, I mean, if I really have to use it for that, I can normal summon it and then run over Quackimiru Drago because it has 100 attack. Molchami Parolia, I can do the exact same thing. And that's about the only thing it really changes. It's really just Molchami Fueros changes everything. Dominus Impulse, it's another copy of Ash, so obviously 10 by Dragon is going to be a little more annoying to deal with. And by a little more, I mean much more annoying, because they don't lose to Molchami Fueros, but we do. And obviously, like I said, the talents are going to be swapped with Crossout, just to ensure that I have as many counters at the Fueros as possible. I also believe I will be swapping the Metaltronius for Nibiru if I stop main decking it. But I'm not 100% sure on that, because it does depend on the end boards that people are making. If people are playing Fire King, I absolutely cannot play Metaltronius, because there is nothing worth negating. As a matter of fact, I don't really think that you want to negate anything against Fire King, because their interruptions come from the graveyard anyways. So I'm completely indifferent about that. Change of Heart, I'm on the fence. I think I will probably be replacing Change of Heart and Unchained Soul of Anguish with Dino Wrestler Pancratops because, like I said, Cosmic Cyclone was not great for me. So I might as well play Pancratops just to be able to out both Quackimiru Drago and things like Power Filter and There Can Only Be One, Scale Drain, etc. Instead of having to play a card that is only dedicated for a back row. I also want to be able to run over like some annoying monsters, destroy a Caesar potentially if I have to. So I think Pancratops is just overall better.
Um, Now I want you to do the shoutouts for me. I know you gotta have shoutouts.
Yeah, I have a bunch of shoutouts. So first of all, shoutouts to you, my man, for featuring me on your channel. I really appreciate it. Shoutouts to my sponsors, Inspire TCG, Dueling Guard, Card Brawlers. Please check all them out. They're the best, man. I wouldn't be where I am today without them. Shoutouts to all my friends from Montreal. Shoutouts to my friends from everywhere. Shoutouts to my roommate Simon He. I mean, the guy that I roomed with for YCS Lille. I was supposed to be with Chris LeBlanc and Landon Oliver, but unfortunately they missed their flights. So I played for them. They cheered for me in spirit. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, shoutouts to everyone that I faced also at the YCS because everybody was super, super nice. Honestly, nothing but fantastic vibes. If I could do this YCS again, I would absolutely do it. It was, like I said, a great experience. And yeah, no, shoutouts to all my boys. Yeah, you guys know who you are.
Um, if you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, make sure to go check it out. It'll be linked down below. Until next time, guys.